Okay, I want to show how to make a cobblestone road using the Substance Designer, which actually is pretty easy. So make a new graph name, cobblestone, and we're going to be doing something along the lines of this kind of arching, not exactly this one, but a similar kind of arching, because there is a wonderful node in Substance for doing these cobblestones, which are generally actually really difficult to do painted. So I want to show how to do this. Basically, start from scratch and use this tile node. It's the arc pavement, which is essentially cobblestone. But if you see, if I just plug it in directly into the normals, it looks all right, but it is very square, and it's just a whole bunch of issues where it just doesn't feel very real. So we can start by kind of changing the shapes of the arc, the scale of the individual blocks, but I have some systems to make it look a lot better. It's just a little more complicated than you might expect, but it definitely works really well. So, what I want to show is how to get something interesting out of this, so it's not square. And one way we can do it is by taking this info, and I'm going to turn it into a, um, a flood fill gradient that we can mess with. The first thing to do is to turn this into a distance node blur, and might sound a little confusing, but essentially what the distance node does is it will expand the edges in between the blocks. So first off, that can be very, very helpful. And if we want to see what we're doing, I can plug it into the height, into the normal, into the ambient occlusion. But I don't want to keep up every time I update it, keep plugging it all in. So I'm going to use a graph node called the dot node, which is really helpful because you just whatever you plug into that, we can plug into everything else and it will automatically update. So I'm going to plug it into the ambient occlusion and the height for now. Also the normal node up here, this converts it into a normal and plugs it into the normal channel. So you can see right away we have something that's almost working, but I want to get a little more interesting and have a little more control over it. So distance node blurs the edges, and that's great. But what I really want to do is kind of isolate each one of these and be able to control their angles and all sorts of things. So another way of using the distance node is to plug it into the mask input, into the source input, and then turn on only source. Everything goes white because we need random colors for this to work in the arc pavement node. So I go down to color random at the base, and this is going to just give me some random colors. If we look at our distance node, pretty quickly we will see a bunch of random colors. So this gives random heights. That's not really what I'm looking for, but I am looking for this map. This is going to be essential for the next step, which is the find edges node, or the edge detect node. And that what that does is it'll take a gradient scale like this, and it'll look for all the edges and create a cut out of all of the edges. So this is a way that we can kind of create isolation between the rocks, have a mask for the rocks. We can play with the roundness. If we want rounder rocks or less round rocks. You can also play with the color random to have even kind of more random situations going on. And then we can always go in and start messing around with the amount here, or the any kind of randomness in the tile, the arcs amount. So there's a lot of control we end up having with the arc pavement node. Very, very useful. Then we can take this edge detect node the way it is. You know, some of these are a little funny shaped. That might be cool. Sometimes that's okay, sometimes you don't want that. That's based off of the distance node and the scale of the individual art blocks. And so, where is it? There's a certain place for the individual amount. Let's see, there's arcs amount, pattern scale. That's what it is. This is the pattern. So if I bring this down, it kind of changes the distribution a little bit. If I bring it up, you can see there's some spaces in there that maybe you don't want. That has everything to do with kind of these edges here. If I get them a little more proper, the edge detect node ends up kind of still making them pretty nicely rounded. And we can even round them a little more, keep them very consistent. So this is very rounded node. You can see there's one spot here where the gray random wasn't working exactly right. But if we go back to color random, we might be able to get it back without destroying anything. Looks like it's having just a little bit of an issue, so maybe pull the pattern scale in, or see, what is it? It's just playing around with uh, the arc amount. Yeah, giving it. There we go. Now there's no double stone, and all of these, they're a little rounded. That's what I wanted. And then you can plug this in. You can see what we get here. Might be a little funky because of the low resolution model here. So what we can do is change it to, what is it, the high poly plane. It gives us a little more polygons to work with, but the other thing we need to do is change the default material so that the tessellation works a little better in the height. So this is a height map, this is a displacement map. You don't always use these, but it's nice to pay attention to them. If we turn up the tessellation factors, it'll be much cleaner, as you can see. And we can also play with the height scale so that it's either taller or just kind of popping up a little bit. And we don't, these cobblestones, we don't want them to go too high. And that'll give us more resolution to play with as far as the displacement map. So there we go. We got a good start. Now we need a little more interest. We want to add color eventually, but the first thing would be to add some noises. So I'm just going to grab this like black and white spots. It's usually pretty good noise. And I'm going to start blending it with this edge detect. I can also bring in a flood fill, which is going to give me a little more information to play with. So first off, we can just kind of drag our edge detect node into flood fill, and it gives us this nice thing, brightly colored. It's useless to me colored, so I'm going to grab the flood fill to gradient node and plug that in there, and then this gives me kind of a nice gradient grayscale that I can use. You can't use color and RGB color and grayscale together because it's combining three channels to one channel. It gets a little confused. So I usually like to mess around sometimes in the gray, and then we'll add the color later. The flood fill is a color node, so it needs to be set to a gradient color node. But here, that looks like a pretty good one. Maybe the multiply slope, or can I plug in a? Oh yeah, it's got a slope input, which the slope blur is a pretty cool tool that just kind of breaks up some things. But I think with this one, we might be able to plug in a noise into that slope input. Let's just see what happens when I do that. Slope input. So what happens with slope input? It just kind of varies it. That's all right. It's not giving us too much. If we plug it into our dot node here, you'll see we get all kinds of variation of our cobblestones. Might be a little too messy, but it is nice to have some variation. So let's use this, but then we can use a levels node to kind of subdue some of this so it's not overly dramatic. And we can just do that by bringing in the top and the bottom just kind of making it a little more grayscale. And then now when I plug that into the dot node, it'll be less dramatic, but it gives me control to play with the dramatic angles if I wanted to, however rough this ends up getting. So we've got a whole lot of angles. I don't really want the ambient occlusion to be using all of this height info. So we can also make another dot node for ambient occlusion, and we'll just go back to the initial edge detect for ambient occlusion. We'll be able to see a little more what's going on clearly. There we go. So now we've got some variations in the heights and the normals, the angles, but it's still very smooth and clean. So now I want to take the slope blur uh, and add some breakup around the edges using a noise, and we could probably use this one here, the black and white spot. So I'm going to import the grayscale from levels here. And then you notice right away it's just way too intense. We want to set it to the slope blur grayscale. We want to set that to min. Bring down the intensity, see what it gets us. Might be a little overly dramatic because of this noise pattern, just too detailed. So sometimes I like to use crystal for the noise pattern. For slope blur, it does break it up in a slightly less intense way and gives us a little more minor breakup without overdoing anything. And then we can plug that into the height map. You can see there's just a little breakup here and there. Maybe the scale of the crystals could go up so we have more detail breakup. And this is just kind of like the initial roughness of the surface that we want to create. Let's play with the intensity just a little bit. I just want a very minor effect. So it's all right. It might be a little rough here. I think it's probably better to leave it somewhere around there where you can see some of the crystallization, some roughness, but it definitely looks like stone. And then I want some pitting. Pitting is really important for stone and concrete. It just kind of happens with erosion. And in that case, we can use the black and white spots with a blend. Blend is just like blending two layers together in Photoshop or any kind of blend in Unreal. And we're just going to take our slope blur grayscale and we're going to blend it together. But instead of copy, I'm going to do min darken. Try that. You can play with the opacity. Let's try min lighten. See if that, yeah, maybe min lighten is going to pop things up. So I want min darken. So basically it's going to try to darken things. And I notice I'm getting, it seems to work okay. Pops here and there. And then plug it in. You'll see a little more pitting here and there, a little more detail. And we can change the scale so there's just a little more um, detail scale, a little more noise up close, and you can see smooth areas and noise areas. The other thing we could try, I haven't tried this yet, but the bevel on the edge detector. Just want to see what this looks like. So this gives a little more kind of construction, round or angular. It's not really giving me what I want. And then you can also use, if you didn't want there to be kind of the grout in between, you can use the distance node again, rather than leaving some grout in between. If you used a distance node, you can kind of bring the edges together. Isn't always what we want. And it didn't really seem like it worked that well there, but it would work well. We brought in the edge detect initially. It does a pretty good job of kind of bringing the edges together. So what that happens is when you want those stones being totally buckled up against each other. But we don't want that. I think I do want the grout for now. If we're doing like a stone wall, sometimes you do want that. Anyway, we have roughness. We've got some pitting. Up close might not look that great, like any texture, but from the distance, it's looking okay. You can see the surface details here, and we might want to maybe smooth out the crystallization a little bit, so there's just some like notches here and there, not everywhere. That feels a little better. So yeah, now it's mostly smooth. Now we have to think about the actual color, and there's a node we use for that, and it's called the gradient map. And what gradient map does is it takes your grayscale, which we can just grab from here, and it will add color to it. So perhaps I don't want to use the flood fill, which gives some nice angles. I don't want that to affect the color, so we'll start on this node that has the edge detect node. We'll start with that. We'll add some color based off of these other noises and stuff here. So here we can say that black is in the gradient node. We can say that black is, just drag it up if you want to delete it, but black is, what is it? It's this kind of beige dirt look. So yeah, let's get a kind of a beige dirt. Oh, it doesn't want to pick gradient. It's unhappy. Let's try it again. Okay, so here, yeah, there we go. It just sometimes it's a little slow. But yeah, some sort of beige dirt, mostly desaturated. And then that looks good. And then the white zone being this kind of gray that we will add some blues and some other colors to. So let's get it just kind of a mid-level gray. Maybe a little bluish. And then mostly gray. And then we'll start creating a little more interest to the color, but I want to see what that looks like on there. We'll use the dot node to plug things in for the color node. And that way I can see everything clearly. The ambient occlusion is turning everything dark. So I'm going to flip that over to white because we were missing a lot of the information that I wanted to see, the grout here. And we'll go back and create more ambient occlusion later. But this should give me a good start. Now I just want to, seems like some things are still a little rough here, especially with this, was it the black and white spots here. So I just want to play around. Yeah, a little less there. Let's play around with opacity so maybe it's a little smoother. There we go. So now it's kind of smooth. And we can use this same black and white spots to blend with the gradient color here. So let's do blend. And when you're using color, I think you have to blend color to color. So it won't let me blend this black and white because it is a black and white map. So I need a gradient map plugged in the middle so that we can blend these two um, color nodes. So now this gradient map doesn't have color yet. And then we also want to make sure it is affecting the model here. And as you can see, it kind of overdoes it. And yeah, let's play with the opacity. I guess min darken is a little rough on it. Min lighten might be better. But first off, we need to adjust these colors because they're all wrong. Anyway, so let's get some little bit of a kind of a mid blue, still pretty desaturated. Let's get the black to be kind of a mid beige, pretty desaturated still. And then I want to do one in the middle for the mid tones, And that'll be kind of maybe blue-gray, but darker, or just something that matches, that kind of brings it all together. Now, I'm not sure how this is going to look all together. Some of these might be a little bright. Let's see, it's probably the min. Now, if we switch over to min darken, we get some weird green. Don't want that. Let's do multiply just to see. Yeah, it's just darkening it altogether. So yeah, somehow we got a little too saturated here. So I'm going to remove the saturation. Okay. Now, if we plug it in, we'll start to see some color over exaggerated, definitely, and also not to mention that we are pretty shiny in the roughness department. I usually like to turn that up a little bit, turn up the roughness, and then we'll probably end up bringing some color from, or some black and white noise into the roughness as well. I don't usually like having grout be shiny, but the rocks will be shiny. So an easy fix to the roughness to get started. Let's just fix some of this oversaturated blue. Okay, that feels a little more stone-like. Okay, and then yeah, that's starting to be something. Okay, so now what I want to do is turn some roughness values on. So we've got this edge detect here. This has black and white values. That's going to be great. I want white, or the grout, which is in black, to be totally rough. So what we can do is use the invert grayscale, and just going to drag this over. So now it's totally rough there. That's great. And then everywhere else, we'll probably want to use some sort of black and white spots and blend it in, probably lightening it, or yeah, lightening it a little bit. So black and white spots with this. Let's give it a min lighten. There we go. And then it's probably going to be a little too shiny, even still. And that's usually where I like to use the either histogram scan, which just kind of moves the whole thing up or down, or the levels. So, but histogram scan, we can just kind of move the whole thing up so that it's a little more rough, but I feel like that we're not getting the variation when we do that, or the control on the variation. So I'm going to use levels and bring in a little bit of um, uh, less black. So the black is on the bottom. Everything's a little too rough when it's black. Now I can plug this in. We're getting too little roughness at this point, so we want some shine. Let's bring this back down a little bit so we get a little bit of shine. And then this is about what I'm looking for. Nice kind of shine here and there. And then the cool thing is, if you do use the same noise, we can kind of change the scale here, give it a more consistency. This kind of works better for bigger, broader tiles, but you can see the color is working, the roughness is working. We just might need a little more ambient occlusion, and honestly, this map might be okay without it. Let's see if I can do a find edges, two find edges. Does that work? Find edges, edge detect. So if I drag this one, bring down the edge width. No, it just, yeah, automatically, something like that. So now I've got these corners of where the stone would be in the grout. I want those to be dark, and using ambient occlusion would be a way to do it. And if we do that, now it pops the corners of the stones a little bit, and that actually really helps popping the stones out, making it feel like cobblestones. And this would be your map. We can go to Explorer and we can just kind of export the outputs into a folder. Let's see, make sure that we're called cobblestone. Yeah, if we export it out, just we'll export it as a bunch of images. The other thing we can do if we wanted to is we should be able to export it to Substance Painter. There's a way to do this. Let's see. I think if you, there's a way to send, yeah, if you select the whole package, you can say send to Substance 3D Player. Um, okay, it does not like that I saved it there, so let's save it somewhere else. Okay, and now it'll open up Substance Painter, and then it will be a material that I can play with. It should show up as one of my smart materials here. Let's see, cobblestone. It should show up. Yeah, here it is, just loading. Now, if I do a new model, I think I have a plane somewhere here. Yeah. And then, yeah, now we can just drag and drop. Now we have cobblestone. You can see, some minor issues, some noise when we're looking up close. Looks good from a distance, but yeah, definitely some kind of roughness around the edges. So that would be kind of going in and finding the areas that are a little blurry. That might be at some point sampling, but let's see. After edge detect, the roughness in there. Let's see. It feels like a little bit on the normal side too. So this is okay. It's not bad there. Yeah, the slope blur looks like it's doing its business. Turn up the samples a little bit. Turn the intensity. You can see how intense that goes. We don't really want it that bad. And then maybe it's we need a slope blur for the roughness as well. So yeah, plug that into here, and then yeah, it breaks it up for roughness, and then we'll plug that in there. Now it's a little rougher. There's also the ambient occlusion that I created. That was really sharp, so we can blur that a little bit using a high quality blur. Just want it to not be totally sharp like that. There, that feels a little better. Maybe it was just the ambient occlusion that was giving me the biggest issue. But I could also kind of swap out the crystals for something that felt a little better. Not bad, but could be better. Um, okay. Let's see what happens when I send that to Substance Painter. Did it do it? It's taking its time. It should send though. Just seemed a little odd. Okay, we're saved. Export dependencies. Okay, that's going to give us all the tools, but I want to send this to Substance Painter. Sometimes it just takes a minute, but it does feel like it's not quite moving quickly. Looks better though. Yeah, it did. I think it just updated the one that was here. So yeah, that looks better. You can see the broken up cobblestones. All of these are really crunchy, so maybe we want to soften them, just smoothing them out. Maybe the black and white spots could be a higher scale, and then that that gets more kind of specific details for the reflection. But overall, it's feeling all right. I just would say the crystals might be a little intense. Just want to break them up a little bit, just so it feels like they've been kicked around here and there. And that should do it. Let's do that. Okay. Any luck? Is it updating? Sometimes it doesn't tell you if it updates. But yeah, overall, this feels like a pretty good cobblestone. That should be 100% tileable. Yeah, that feels a little better now. Yeah, higher detail. This will work out pretty well for cobblestones. If we wanted to change the pattern and use the same system, all we have to do is go back here to Arc Pavement, and we can use a different pattern. We can use the tile generator. Works really well for this. We just need, just like we have the different grayscale here, we just need different grayscale here. We're going to find that under Luminance Random, something like that. Now, if you plug it into the input and the slope input, you can see now we've got these cobblestones with square values. We can also change the offset of them to make them a little more interesting too. And this is fun for bricks. We can make the scale smaller, and that can kind of sometimes mess things up, but if we turn up maximum distance, we'll bring it back. This should, okay, so yeah, it's a little tricky getting the scale and the distance to match up, but if you get the scale small enough, down to like 1 pixel, you'll get this kind of shape. And then now we just need to randomize it a little bit so it doesn't look quite so geometric. Offset random, good. Turn vertical offset to position random, and just kind of really get it random. And then now I could probably bring my distances down. Make sure that I'm not losing anything here. Okay, so not bad. And then maybe playing with the middle breakup, offset random seed. I want to get a little smaller too, so let's see the overall amount. Get more of those. Yeah, there you can see it starts to lose it because the edge roundness is high. If we bring the edge roundness down, now we've got a very complex kind of cobblestone system, very mathematical. It's just about playing with these until we get something that feels right. Sometimes it's the randomness that's the issue. Let's see, I want to find random scale. Okay, scale is fine, but get it right around there. This is kind of what you see as a type of flagstone. And then this also is affected by the flood to fill gradient, which we can eventually turn it into more of a extruded blocks as well. But here we've got a nice cobblestone. I could easily turn this into kind of more of a flagstone thing. This works pretty well, although it's not old style. This is definitely modern looking. It's all about kind of finding our patterns through whatever tools we're using. Bringing up edge width can give you the more kind of broken up pieces. Roundness does give you the more round pieces, and then we can mess with them even more with the slope blur to give them much more broken up feels. Let's see, that's in the, I think that was for the roughness slope, but this slope, if I bring this up, will break up the actual surface a little more. Doesn't look like the height is happy about that though, probably because the slope blur Just messing with it pretty intensely. But yeah, something like that. Some chips here and there. And then you can see that could even be like a riverbed. The other thing that I love to use is the splatter, shape splatter. This does work really well to add just random things together and get multiple patterns together, and that's fun. It's this one that works the best. No, not that one. This one. Yeah, this one with the all of the options here. That one always seems to work. You put a pattern in here. It could just be a shape. You can get some pretty cool stuff. The shape here, plug a single pattern in. We look at it, it's not doing much. We start to mess with the let's see, scale. So you can barely kind of see it, but it's there, and it's about the height is the reason why it's not very visible. We can add random height. This is a very simple kind of tile pattern to begin with, but it's pretty easy to turn it into rotation patterns of position random. So it's just going everywhere. And then you could even use an edge detect on this and get quite some good interesting things out of the shape splatter as well. Edge detect is great because you'll isolate things to get them to be kind of rounder or more square instead of just kind of laying over each other. The other thing that helps again is the distance node. This one will fill in the gaps if you don't want gaps, and this can be pretty cool when you're trying to create rocks and things that bunch up together. Anyway, just want to go back to the topic. This is the cobblestone that we wanted to create. Came out pretty well. This should be tiling indefinitely because of the way that all these patterns work. They do tile. Cool. Thank you.